Hey everybody, it's been a long time since I made a Thought of the Day video. Man, we've been doing so many things. Festival season, we've been doing Meet the Solomons because of the book tour and sabbatical, and we just had not given any love to the, Thought of the Day playlist. So it's time. And right now, as you watch this video, I'm right in the middle of sabbatical. And I'm away, so I'm not responding to comments and those different things, but I made all these videos before I left on sabbatical so that some content would be posting as I was gone. And so I had a Thought of the Day video ready to kind of pull out of the archives. I'd been waiting to talk about, and I've talked about a similar thing before. So Christianity Today does these special pastor special issues of their magazine. They come out twice a year, spring and fall. I don't know. But this was their fall of 2022 issue, the CT Pastor Special issue. So it's more geared for, it doesn't really follow the same format. It's full of just helpful articles for spiritual leaders and pastors and those kind of things. And there's just all kinds of treasures and gems in every single one of these issues that they put out. There's also a lot of articles that, whatever, I might toss aside or even the occasional one I consider garbage. But there's a lot of good stuff in here all the time. In this issue, my favorite article I wanted to share on a Thought of the Day video was from Pete Scazzero. And a lot of people know him from the emotionally healthy church, emotionally healthy spirituality, emotionally healthy discipleship. He kind of leads a whole body of work that's emotionally healthy, whatever. And his wisdom has been so helpful. In a lot of ways, we have a lot more cultural emotional intelligence today than we did 10, 20 years ago. The church growth movement, particularly just in the world of ministry, had not produced emotionally healthy spirituality. And so Pete set out to kind of start speaking to that. And he was ahead of the curve. He was on the front end of conversations that I think today we find far more normal. Conversations that, have influenced my own mind, my own spirituality. A lot of my mentors, even at Impact Campus Ministries, we're a couple degrees removed from Pete's ministry. We have some connections to people that are on his board. And so we know Pete's material relatively well. And he just speaks with such wisdom about being mentally healthy, emotionally healthy, spiritually healthy. Like, we've got to be healthy people before we can lead anybody anywhere. And so he did this article. He was interviewed for this issue by Christianity Today, specifically by Matthew Lapine. So Matthew was the one that was interviewing Pete. And I wanted to read a couple just little excerpts of the interview. If you want to read the whole thing, it's page 55 of this issue. So go find yourself a copy of this issue. And you can find, maybe you can even find the article itself isolated on their website or whatever. I'm not sure. But here's just, I just found it to be thought-provoking, just stimulating for healthy consideration. So first question Matthew asks Scazzero is this: pastors are feeling overstretched and emotionally exhausted. Many have asked Christianity Today how to raise up and train leaders in their churches in this moment. Is this the right question to be asking right now? Like, if we're emotionally exhausted, if we're, should we even be asking the question, how do we train up leaders? And Pete says this: I do think it's the right question. Every leader needs to be asking that question. How do I develop and raise up other leaders? A little bit later he says, but there's prior work that has to be done. First, we can only develop leaders out of who we are before we can lead out of what we say or do. We cannot give what we do not possess. We can only develop leaders out of who we are before we can lead out of what we say or do. Second, this moment is calling for a more robust spiritual formation and discipleship. COVID-19 should be a wake-up call. In the past couple of years, many people have told me that they realize the superficiality of their discipleship, that small groups were not enough. The way we have measured success numerically is inadequate. Can't say that enough. The way we have measured success numerically is inadequate. Matthew then asks him this. He says, in emotionally healthy discipleship, you discuss the importance of developing a theology of weakness. What do you mean by that, and why is it so essential? Pete says a theology of weakness very simply is that God himself came into the world weak. The very nature of the incarnation is weakness. I obviously think of Philippians 2, verses 1 through 11. I just preached on that passage, a month or two ago. That's one of my favorite passages right now. I could not agree more that this concept and this idea is so central to this season of history that the church finds herself in right now. So, theology of weakness, Philippians 2, 1 through 11. We need leaders who integrate a theology of weakness into their discipleship. You hear that? A lot of people are weary. A theology of weakness is going to refresh them and give them perspective. There's an invitation here into silence and to stillness, to waiting on God. If we're just living off another big worship event, or if we need to get juiced up by worship on Sunday like it's going to carry us through the week, that's just not enough. We've got to make disciples. Pete is preaching. Let's see, Matthew asked this. If pastors commit to this sort of discipleship, what will its fruit be in 5 to 10 years? And how does it contrast with a hasty approach that anxiously strives to get attendance numbers back? Scazzero says this, if you just want to get your numbers back, I don't think you're going to develop mature disciples. That was not Jesus' strategy. He invested himself in leadership development of 12 and 3 within the 12, and 1 didn't work out. It was really hard, but long range, it worked. Changed the course of human history. We are not called to build a crowd. We are called to build a church. And we build a church by making disciples. If we invest in people well, the growth is organic. It's bottom up. I don't have to manufacture it or strive to make it happen. Matthew asks Pete next, pastors of small congregations face unique challenges in developing leaders as they grapple with the stress of viability and limited numbers of potential volunteers. How is recruiting and developing leaders different in small churches versus big churches? Pete says, we are looking for people who are faithful, available, and teachable. A little bit later, he gives some practical examples. He says, my wife and I ran a group in our basement. Every year, we chose 12 to 18 people. We hosted the group, investing 3 hours every other Sunday night. We also did weekends together. It was very intensive, but God blessed us with many leaders and pastors that emerged out of that basement over the years. Matthew responds, the characteristics of faithful, available, and teachable sound to me like a very wide net. But how do people get into your basement? How can pastors choose whom to invest in? I love this little nugget. It comes a little bit later in Pete's answer, but he eventually says this. I'm not looking for charisma. I'm really not. I can tell you story after story of charismatic leaders that did not work out because so many other things were missing, like teachability, humility, and openness. But there were many people I never expected to become significant leaders, yet they did because their character became so extraordinary. They led out of their character more than their giftedness. Oh, that's big. You could rewind and listen to that again. I want to talk about the risks, Matthew says, of recruiting leaders, especially in smaller churches. When should you not hire or not recruit a leader? How do you backpedal from a mistake on that? Among many things, Pete says this. He says, don't give people a title so that they will do something. That's dangerous. You're stewarding and giving people power. So you want to be careful that they've got the humility and the teachability to be in that position. The last question he's asked in the interview is this: what biblical encouragement would you offer pastors in this season? Pete says this, 1 Corinthians 15, verse 58, therefore stand firm, let nothing move you. Always give yourselves fully to the work of the Lord, because you know that your labor for the Lord is not in vain. Pete says, my encouragement to pastors and leaders is this: stay with Jesus. Serve as a leader. There's a suffering that comes with that, but I promise you that God is going to meet you. Hang in there through those times when you feel like everything in you wants to quit. Stay with it and get resourced so that you have something to give out. You'll look back later and say the most transformative times in my life came out of my failures, setbacks, and when I thought that everything was going backward. Stay with God because he's doing something in you and through you. Nothing crazy profound in that article, but all kinds of just wonderful nuggets, reminders, things that we on a surface level ascend to, like we're like, I agree with that, but I have a really hard time embodying. And it's part of what I've enjoyed about Pete's ministry as he's encouraged emotionally healthy churches, emotionally healthy leadership, emotionally healthy discipleship, emotionally healthy ministry. So may we be more emotionally healthy leaders. To go back to one of his first quotes I read, may we realize that we cannot lead somewhere we have not been. We cannot give somebody something we do not possess. And so if we want our churches or our disciples or our friends or our family or our students or whatever it might be to be full, emotionally healthy, fully equipped individuals, let us remember that we have to embody that and possess that in ourselves first. That's my thought of the day. Hopefully you find those little resources that we share helpful. And I look forward to getting back to the Kingdom Teaching series in the next video. Okay? We'll talk to you guys then.